Welcome to Solutions from the Yard, a candid discussion about life behind bars and its effect on society. We'll discuss reintegration or reentry back into the community post-incarceration. Your host for this episode is Dietrich Trent.
Welcome to Solutions from the Yard. I'm your today's host, Dietrich Trent.
Michael Dickerson-El.
Charles Hopkins.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about, the topic is, man, you going to the SHU. Welcome to the SHU, HOU, Special Housing Unit. Mm-hmm. That's what the name of this topic is, the SHU. Now, we all know 9 out of 10, everybody going to touch the SHU. Some way, somehow, if it's through traveling, disciplinary, whatever, maybe somehow you're going to touch the Special Housing Unit. But today I want to get to the root of when this special solitary confinement came into existence. And two of the things that I recognize is when it comes to incarceration, when it comes to solitary confinement, it was never an intent for rehabilitation. It was always for the intent to the severest punishment there could be. Mm-hmm. So United States began experimenting with solitary confinement more than 200 years ago when American penological was undergoing a philosophical transformation influenced by the Enlightenment, which sought to distance itself from the brutality of corporal punishment. The pioneers of solitary confinement were activist reformers who believed that silence and solitude would induce the repentance and motivate the prisoners to live a devout, socially responsible life. This theory served as a basis for the establishment of the United States' first silent prison. Penitentiaries were where every prisoner were placed in solitary confinement. Penological premise of silent prisons intrigued prominent 19th century thinkers, including political theorist Alex D. Tocqueville. The penological premise of silent prisons intrigued prominent 19th century thinkers, including political theorist Alex D. Tocqueville, literary icon Charles Dickens, who traveled to the United States to observe what was being publicized as a revolutionary system for rehabilitating individuals convicted of crimes. After observing people isolated in dark cells in Pennsylvania Eastern Penitentiary, however, both men revised their views about rehabilitative potential of silent prisons. De Tocqueville remarked, this is his quote, "This absolute solitude is nothing if nothing interrupts it. It is beyond the strength of man. It destroys the criminal without intermission and without pity. It does not reform, it kills." And these are some of the architects of solitary confinement when it was called silent confinement. Now, with that being said, right, we're gonna talk about this solitary, the first part of this, when it was silent, when putting you in prison was silent. We all went through that. Go to the corner, face the wall, and be quiet. Well, I think all our parents told us, be quiet, go to the corner, go sit down, be quiet. And that was a form of punishment. So they moved that be quiet to the prison systems, being quiet. Then they seen that this wasn't doing nothing. This wasn't helping to rehabilitate individuals to become better individuals that was coming back to society, because telling someone to be quiet for a long period of time would do some traumatic things to not only to their mind but to their brain. Now, I want to ask you two brothers, because I know you brothers both has spent extensive time in prison. Did y'all did a long stint in solitary confinement in the SHU? Even anybody?
Well, I did 4.5 years in the Supermax, and the Supermax was a control unit. Mm-hmm. And the design was that you had 12 men on the pod, and you did 23 in one, or depending on how they felt. Now, the impact.
Speak on the silent part of it.
Right, because the impact of it was that I remember I was out in they took me out in the cage to exercise. And I remember I was out in the cage, and the dude told me, he'd been through that a couple of times. He said, "Man, you ain't gonna be right when you leave here." And I'm saying, like, I did time on lockup. I just, this ain't nothing. Mm-hmm. But it was because everything is, you don't have nobody you interact with. Everybody on the tier is confined to that cell. Any interaction you have, it elevates to become to a point where you become so frustrated. Because now, when I went in there, this is what the guy told me before I went in there. He said, because I got caught up the new jail MCTC, they caught me with some bolt cutters. So the dude told me, said, man, if you get caught with them, they're gonna send you to Supermax, and you're gonna go stay there for 5 years. So when I went in there, that's what I thought. But when I got in there, the joint was like so crazy, and dudes had been there prior to me getting there, like been 3 and 4 years, and so they had really mentally they was like so totally detached from anything that was real. You had dudes that was slinging feces. You had dudes that was mutilating their bodies. You had dudes that was excessive masturbating off the female police or whoever. You had like this is the kind of environment that it created, right? And for me, I had a routine where I would get up in the morning, I would like work out, then I carved all my damn blocks. But when I got out that joint, I could see the impact it had on me. Cause when I got out and got into the general population, cause mind you ain't around nobody. Ain't nobody around you. Ain't nobody running beside you. So when I got out the joint, look, I was real leery of being in the midst of a lot of people.
And
I ran into a lot of dudes that I knew, and then when they was coming to holler at me, I was kind of standoff, and they recognized. But this came from me being in this, and this was the Supermax. This is like the more, and this was considered for Maryland system. This was they dubbed this as like the ultra confinement for prisoners that's disruptive and got disciplinary behavior in the state of Maryland. And this what this was.
I want you to hold on to because I want you to come. I'm gonna come back to you. I want you to explain about the shoe, coming from the shoe to general population, and how that aspect and that can coincide with coming from prison back to society, and see how they correlate with one another. Talking to you, Brother Dickerson-El, and tell the audience what was, how it is for brothers, yourself, or any sisters that's in these solitary confinements through your experience and you seeing from how was it? How did it not? We're going to talk about how it affected you, but tell me how was it just being in there?
Well, how was it when I was in there? I had an experience with different levels of security, like Chuck was saying about Supermax. I've been in different prison systems where there's solitary confinement or special housing units was different. One of my first experiences was down YC1, Youth Center 1. Yeah. They had different levels. And when I say different levels, I'm going to explain it real quick. Like you had the regular level where you was just in max, you might have gotten to a fight, whatever. You had the cells lined up, but you can still talk to somebody. Y'all can fish down the tier, and people that know what fish mean, make a little a string, whereas though you can transfer books or whatever back and forth to somebody that's in a nearby cell. That's what's called fishing.
Yeah, transportation system.
Right. So, you had that, but then you had what was called 3 Tower. 3 Towers was for what you call certain disciplinary actions. Now, if you had like a murder, you might have had some form of disciplinary act, like where you fought, you had a fight with a CO.
I mean, because when you speak of you had a murder, you talking about someone had a murder that's
right.
coming to prison, or
no,
you committed a murder.
You committed a murder
inside the prison.
Inside the prison. Like if you committed a murder inside the prison, or maybe if you had a high profile and you couldn't be around nobody, that it was called 3 Tower. And 3 Tower was one of the towers that was specially made with cells in the bottom of it. So it didn't have no rec room, nothing like it had in a regular maximum unit. It was just a round tower with cells in it. And all the cells was metal. They was metal cells. So Allah forbid if you went in there during the summer. But the point that I'm making is that when I say the levels, because when you was in 3 Tower, it wasn't no 23 and 1. It was 24 and 24. You never came out of the cell. So therefore you was always in the cell unless you took, like they might give you a shower like twice out of a week. They give you a shower twice out of a week. You didn't have no interaction with nobody except the CO that was coming around passing your food out. That was it. And it was so extreme that they had, if you got more than a couple of weeks, you had to leave out of 3 Tower. Saying like if you got a month, which I had once before, I had a month because I got caught with 25 homemade knives in my ceiling. So I had to do a month. So after a week, they take me out of 3 Tower in shackles and handcuffs, take me to the regular hole. so I can go down there, do a 23-1, take a shower, do things that other regular inmates used to do when they was on maximum security.
Right.
Because they can come out for rec every day, 23-1. In 3 towers, no 23-1. You in the cell 24 hours a day. So to keep you from going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, they would take you out every week just to have a normal 23-1 like everybody else, and then put you back in there.
That's torture.
So you did that back and forth until your month was up.
And that sound and I know about that place. They called it the satellite behind.
Right. And see, that basically this go along with what you're saying. When you say silent, it's silent.
It was called the silent. Yeah, behind the wall. They had that was serious. That was a shoe outside of the shoe.
Right.
You right there at the gate, on the outside of the gate of the premise. The history, we speaking of this, the solitary confinement, because this is something that's serious. There's something serious that's not being talked about. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our brothers and sisters are suffering silently in these confined cells, like Dickerson-El said, with no sunlight, no nothing. I mean, we could tell you the horror tales of these cells. But the history of the solitary confinement in the United States stretched from the silent prison of 200 years ago to today's maximum supermax prisons. Mechanism of panel con that isolates 10 of thousand. Panel con is like a bubble where everything is surrounded. It can see in all different angles without moving. We can see from all around, and you can see from all around. This is something they build now, so it don't take a lot of manpower to watch all these people. Mm-hmm. It just take one person and put them in this bubble that they can see all around. Sometimes for decades, we examined the living conditions and the characteristics of this population in solitary confinement. As part of the growing movement for reform, public health agencies have an ethical obligation to help address the excessive use of solitary confinement in jails and in prisons in accordance with established public health functions. Violence, prevention, health, equity, surveillance, and minimizing occupational and psychological hazards for correctional staff. The public professionals should lead efforts to replace the reliance on these overly punitive correctional policies with models based on rehabilitation and restorative justice. And this is being quoted from an article from the American Public Health Associations. Right? They published this article back in January of 2015. We talking about almost 8 years ago, right? And then we talking about something that's still going on to this day.
Right today.
Getting back to you, because I want the audience to see the correlation of coming from the SHU back to general population and how it runs neck to neck with coming from prison back to society. Because people don't understand the SHU is like jail is to what it is to society and prison. And let me explain that to you. You being in general population, that's like our society. But when you go to SHU, it's like you going to jail while you in jail. You leaving society. And like Mike said, you leaving society. You don't have you can't do nothing. And that's like coming from prison when you coming from prison, coming back to society. Right. Explain to them how that is coming back, like you was getting in the story about people coming up close to you, because I know a lot of people don't understand what that extensive solitary confinement does to you mentally.
Right, because the thing is, you don't have no human contact. And because you don't have no human contact, you can't interact with people on like daily. So you really, everything you're doing is you really confined to your cell, and you internalize a lot of things. So your ability to like interact with people for 4.5 years, you're not around nobody, like walking the yard, eating in the chow hall. When you go on a visit, they put you in a cube, and it's like a little glass enclosure, and your people on the other side. When you leave there, they put you in a 3-piece, take you back to your cell. Yes. You ain't never come into contact with nobody. The only person you come in contact with is the officer. So for 4.5 years, and like I told you, I was in there for 4.5 years. When I got there, some people was there 3 years. When I left 4.5 years later, they was still there. So when they came and told me they was sending me out, they said they're gonna send me down to a maximum security prison. So when I get down to the maximum security prison, I'm like real leery of hanging out. Everywhere I go, I'm really like keeping traffic in front of me. I'm off to the side. Few people that I know I'm walking with, if they walking in the crowd, I'm making them navigate outside the crowd. When I go in the chow hall, I'm trying to be the last one in the chow hall to get the last table, so that where I'm facing be facing where the serving line is at, and the serving line is closed down, so ain't nobody got no reason to be behind me. All this was going on for a minute, and then they up and sent me to. They told, like, I was there for a month. Then they up and took and sent me to another institution, they called the cut, just. Yeah. And when I got there, it was like night and day, because maximum security, but it was like it was on steroids. Everybody ripping and running, and everybody see me that know me, and I'm paralyzed and standing still when they come like, hey man, what's up with you? I ain't seen you in a long time. I'm like, oh yeah, right, that's what the hell wrong with you? So somebody said, oh man, he just came out of Supermax. As if that everybody that came out of Supermax, they seen the same behavior in them.
Like they got to unthaw, or like they got...
Yeah, I had to throw out. And it took me a minute. And then to be, and like, but the biggest problem that impact that it had on me was when I got visits, I got contact visits. Yeah. Right, when I got contact visits from my family, I'm like, I want to hug them. You can hug them, right? And they ain't saying nothing, they ain't doing nothing. Like, you can hug them and let them go. And like, I'm looking at them, they looking at me like, man, what the heck wrong with you? It took me a minute. And that was the impact it had. Yes. And I know for a fact that psychologically, it damaged me big time. I just didn't revert to like self-mutilization. I didn't revert to like slinging feces. But I internalized. I became real like an introvert in terms of like when I'm around people and how I'm dealing with people and how I'm talking to people, because that isolation and the sensory deprivation, it really impacted me.
The living conditions in solitary confinement are physically unhealthy, extremely stressful, and psychologically traumatizing. A typical cell is 60 to 80 square feet. That's with right. A cot, a toilet, a sink, a narrow slit for a window. Yep. That's if you lucky. If you got a window, because some of the Jones don't have windows. No. And sometimes a small molded desk bolted to a wall. That's right. That's right there. That's a plus too, because some cells don't have desks. Right. In many facilities, cells have a steel door with a small slat for delivering meals. That's right. That one they go.
That's right. Hit that slot.
Yeah. Inmates with little exposure to natural sunlight. That's right. Bright fluorescent light illuminating each cell, often through the night, disrupting natural sleep cycles, circadian rhythms. Some solitary confinement units are nearly silent, except for sudden outbursts other than subject prisoners to an incident or copy of clanking of metal doors, jingling keys, booted footsteps, distressed voice reverberating off the thick walls. In more modern units, electronic doors, search cameras, intercom create a mechanism environment that minimize face-to-face contact. So now they're getting to the more modernized time. See, back then it used to be used. A lot of prisoners used to come down. Officers come down the tier. They had to come down. Now they don't have to do that no more because they got cameras and everything there on all these tiers and in the cells, so they don't have to do a lot of contact. And so prisoners are usually taken out of their cells for 1 hour on the weekdays for recreational and showers, or in some systems once a week for 5 hours before being moved from their cells. Prisoners are cuffed and often shackled at the waist and placed in leg irons. Recreation usually occurs either in an open cage outdoor or in an indoor area or in your cell. Right. Sometimes with an open barred top. Some prisons offer group therapy sessions, but in many facilities, participants are chained to metal chairs and they are mounted to the floor. I don't know where that's at, but I ain't never seen that to know. But the main thing, what I was just explaining to you, put yourself in your mind. This is where they keeping people in the cell for this many days, hours, years, locked away. Dickerson-El, you were speaking about Tower 3. And some of the things I just explained, you didn't have none of that in Tower 3. You didn't have any property, anything in Tower 3, did you?
No, Tower 3, you don't get nothing. You don't even get mail. You can't even, regular.
Hold on. Because that went over the audience head. Because don't you supposed to have some type of contact with society. Can you tell the audience again? You ain't get what?
You don't get no mail. You don't have no contact with anybody. The only contact you gonna have, like I said, when them 3 hots and the cop come, and the CO bringing that around. That's the only contact you have. 3 tower, you like in regular maxes, you can have your Walkman. You know what I'm saying? You can get your mail, but 3 tower, you don't have no contact. You can't use the phone. Like other,
That
you know,
sound like
other maxes, shoes, you can still at least use the phone. You come out, get your phone time. Some shoes you can get a haircut. In 3 tower, there's nothing. You doing 24/24. You don't get no mail. You don't get no phone calls. And like I said, you only gonna take a shower like twice a week. That's it.
So, because that sound very.
Oh, that's draconian.
That sound very.
draconian.
Yeah, and that sound like somebody was breaking the law, which we know.
Yeah, that's
Because-
But that's why they brung you out once a week. You see what I'm saying?
It sound like
'Cause
there's a lot
they
of-
know that what they was doing was wrong, so they bring you out once a week.
To justify your
So you can at least say I did come out the cell.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So when you put someone in these extreme conditions, sensory deprivation from people, being isolation from people, you started losing a lot of things that make your senses as a human.
Right.
Like, what I'm saying, just as far as things, your eyesight. People don't know. A lot of brothers
yes.
that been in a lot of these solitary confinements, they suffer years later on because from the
light.
the lighting in your cell, certain things like you said, man, you don't want people to touch you. These are things you deprive of people touching. These are things that been brought on from their prison, from their cell. And like you were saying in the 3 tower, because it seemed like, man, that was, I never been to the satellite, right? But I was behind the wall. I know a lot of brothers that was in that situation, and they ain't had nothing pleasant to say about coming out of that situation, right? So with that being said, tell me what mental you could seem like you went through this early on in your prison bed.
Yep.
What kind of effect did it have? Did you ever recover from that time being in them situations? I know it's hard to say did you ever recover from that, but years later, did you see how it affected you, and did you ever heal from that situation?
No. What I would say, what it did to me, because that happened to me the actual second time I was locked up, not on this actual bit, but it happened to me the second time, and I was in it numerous of times. That's why I was telling you earlier that when I got non-benefit from youth center.
Right.
So I've been through 3 times like 3 times, and for me, I think it traumatized me to the point where as though I got extremely desensitized. So whenever I do go to the hole,
That's right.
I actually shut down just like that. I'm in the cell by myself. I know I ain't gonna get no contact. I'm not expecting nothing, none of the above. So that's how I carry it. When it's been times that I've been in the cell with guys, and they be like, "Why you don't talk? Why you don't do this?" And I said, "Man, look, man, I don't do no bunch of talking, man. I don't have to talk. I've been in the shoe before for 7 months and don't even come out for rec because that's what I'm used to. I got so desensitized to not even leaving the cell, I didn't even want to leave the cell."
That's right.
Hold it right there, and we're gonna come right back to you in our next episode from Solutions from the Yard. You going to the shoe.
You've been listening to Solutions from the Yard. This podcast is presented by Voices for a Second Chance, a comprehensive reentry program that provides culturally appropriate, trauma-informed, gender-specific, and peer-based services. For more information, go to info@vscdc.org or visit our website at www.vscdc.org.